went back up to where I'd killed that deer. And on Tuesday evening, I heard somebody talking, and I don't have the best hearing in the world. And so I knew they was close to me. So I texted my buddy, and he was about 400 yards from me. And I told him, I said, somebody's on your property. I said,
Wow.
I don't understand their language, and it's not a language that I've ever heard. And to me, it sounded a lot like Native American with monkey chatter mixed in with it.
Welcome back to the I Jupiter podcast. I am your host, Tom Franklin, and today we have on Mr. Tim Dills. I'm dealing with a bit of a cold. It's hot here. It's sweaty here. I'm digging pools and suffering a cold, and snot's coming out of my head, so you're going to hear me cough once in a while. Don't be alarmed. I am not dying as of yet. I want to go ahead and at the very beginning here thank each and every one of you. There's very specific people that I put on the last shout out video that's in the past. So this one's going to be in the future, but there's going to be some more shout outs to come. Thank you all very, very much for your support, and hopefully you enjoy what I do. So thanks. And without any further ado, let's welcome to the Eye of Jupiter podcast. Wait, I'm going to get my mouse going here. Come on, mouse. Come on. One, Mr. Tim Dills.
Ah,
Hey, Tim, how's it going?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No, it must be a little bit of a glitch in the matrix. Hi, Tim. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing all right, man. Just going through the motions of life a little bit, and just trying to, talk to people who've had very interesting experiences that I've yet to have, and that's why you're on, my friend. Oh, and also I think you're friends with Mr. George Lunsford. Is this correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I just
Oh,
I met up with him and some other guys in the NCI. That's the name of their group. I done a podcast with them and just become friends with them. So I've met him now, and he's a great guy.
yeah, he's fantastic, and every time I've talked to him, it's always been joy and puts a big smile on my face. And he's a very sweet person, and I enjoy talking with him. So I can understand why you would be friends with him as well. So, for the Eye Jupiter watchers, listeners, viewers, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself, Tim, and where we can find you?
Okay. My name is Tim Dills. I live in Franklin, North Carolina. My YouTube and my TikTok is Tim Dills 13. And I just post stuff on there that I get while I'm squatching, videos and that kind of stuff. And I'm I'm not really that big into all the tech stuff. That's the reason I hang out with other guys that are. but I do get some stuff every once in a while by myself. But usually I'm with guys that are, because when I go to the woods, I'm usually hunting or fishing or something like that. And of course, I always take my phone, and so I'll have it in case I do see something. But they're a whole lot better than I am. I just get little bits here, yonder, and about.
Okay, so squatching. What exactly is squatching, Tim? What is that?
Uh, that's just what we call when we go out looking for Bigfoot.
Okay,
Uh,
and it's
uh,
just got. Did you coin it so we can start paying you, or like?
I, I don't know who come up with it. It probably. Um, I was on the show Finding Bigfoot, and
Oh
they
wow.
say it's there, so I might have just picked it up from there.
Oh, okay. So behind the scenes a little bit, I talked to Tim briefly before the show. I always like to have my guests tell me the stories and have my natural reaction and my natural inquisition is the wrong word. My natural inquiries of or questions about what they've experienced, seen, um, heard about, or what's the word I'm looking for, or looking into themselves. So Tim was telling me that he had his first encounter in 2008. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Could you
Um,
tell me a little bit
a,
about that?
a guy moved in up above me, and you just have to. Well, unfortunately, now he's passed on, but he become my best friend. Just seemed like overnight. His family had some land up here, and they would come up from Florida every once or twice a year just to go to the cabin and hang out and that kind of stuff. And but they moved up permanently, and he said, "I'd like to get you to come out and we'll hang up some feeders and that kind of stuff, and we'll start deer hunting up there." And I thought, well, I'm all about that. That ain't no problem whatsoever. And he said, but one thing we've got to do, we've got to pull a trick on my boys. They had taken a big set of deer antlers off of an axis deer, which we don't have around here nowhere, and had snuck them in front of his trail cam and played a trick on him. So he
Okay.
wanted to get them back. And I told him, I said, well, back in the 70s, my dad and one of his friends found some big old footprints up here in the snow in December. I said, I'll cut us out a set of them footprints. I do a lot of carpenter work. I cut out a set and snuck in, and we made all kinds of signs, broke limbs, and stomped around in the mud and all of that stuff. And so the joke went over pretty good on them. I mean, it it got them so upset they didn't know what to do. And we
Okay.
thought, well, we got them good. They ain't going to be pulling no more jokes on us. And after being on his property for a few months, going up almost every day, every few days, we started getting messed with. And we knowed it wasn't his boys because um, they was in a band and they was traveling around, so we know there wasn't nobody up there. And it come to find out that there was actually Bigfoots on the property. And then after we'd pulled the joke on them, nobody wanted to believe us because they know you ain't gonna fool us again. Ha ha ha! Yeah, real funny, but they're actually turned out to be on the property. We have been screamed at, yelled at, rocks thrown. That's where I also heard them talk on two different occasions. I mean, just all kind of stuff like that went on up there.
So
And
Tim, the talking. Are you talking about what they refer to as samurai chatter?
it it's a lot like the samurai chatter, but to me, the samurai chatter was more aggressive. Um, what I heard it on two different evenings the same week, on a Tuesday evening and a Thursday evening. I was up in there. I'd already killed one deer, and one thing that we learned that they will come in and carry the gut piles off. I mean, it
Okay.
looks like you brought in a cleaning crew, and you won't find no guts, no hair, no blood, nothing. It'll just be completely clean. And uh, I went back up to where I'd killed that deer, and on Tuesday evening, I heard somebody talking, and I don't have the best hearing in the world, and so I knew they was close to me. So I texted my buddy, and he was about 400 yards from me, and I told him, I said, somebody's on your property. I
Oh
said,
wow.
I don't understand their language, and it's not a language that I've ever heard. And to me, it sounded a lot like Native American with monkey chatter mixed in with it.
That's
And
interesting.
the first time I heard it, I have Native Americans in my family. My uncle was a full-blooded Cherokee, so I've heard some of their language and stuff, and that was the first thing that went through my mind was that it sounded a lot like the Cherokee language, but with monkey, uh, just just gibberish
Yes.
in and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
kind
Kind
of
of like little growls and snarls or something. Like little growls and snarls or something like that.
well, that
Okay.
just maybe like a squeak or something like that. It wasn't just a fluent language. Um, it's hard to describe, but the I can remember the very first time the very first thing I ever heard it say, and they was two of them talking back and forth. It was huh, hey, oh, yeah, huh, like that, and I
Oh,
thought, okay, that don't make no sense.
right.
Um, and so I texted him and I said, "There's somebody on your property," and he said, "Well, just sit still because his property is behind a locked Forest Service gate, so." He said they'll have to turn their lights on to get out, and we can find out where they come in at, and find out what they're doing in here. And we sat till way after pitch black dark, and they never did leave, so we left. That was on a Tuesday, and on Thursday of the same week, I heard it up there again, and the about the same time, just about the time of day for deer and stuff to start moving and so I heard them do that twice. I sort of skipped a little bit. The very first encounter that we had with him, we was up in the loft of his cabin, and he had wild hogs coming in rooting his yard up, and he said we need to get the hogs out of the yard so that they'll quit rooting it up. And I told him, I said, okay, so we'll get up in the loft of the cabin, up in the top bedroom, and we'll take the screen off and shoot them with a crossbow when they come in the yard. And we were sitting there, and three raccoons come out in the yard and started running around the feed. And there's a little old swampy branch right beside his yard. And all of a sudden, they run back in, and when they did that, something grabbed one up, and it started squalling. I don't know if you've ever heard a coon squall, but it's horrendous sound. And
Right.
I'd heard it a lot, in coon hunting and that kind of stuff, getting in fight with dogs. And it went on for just a little bit, and then all of a sudden you just heard a big, and everything went dead quiet.
You mean like a
And
roar?
yeah, I looked at my buddy and I
Oh,
said, "But I know every animal in these woods. I've seen the red wolves. I've seen black panthers, and I don't know of anything that makes that sound." And
which
we just sat there listening. Then it started whistling,
which part of the
and
country is this, Tim?
it's in the western end of North Carolina, in western
Oh,
North Carolina.
so near the Cherokee Reserve.
Yeah, yeah, we're
Okay.
we're I can
Like,
be over to the Cherokee Reservation in about 20-30 minutes.
oh, okay. So you're out past Asheville, out that way.
Oh yeah, we're even further west than Asheville.
Right. I watched a whole program about Appalachian Speak, and you can find it on YouTube. And so yeah, I know that area. I mean, I've never been there, but peripherally. So well, that's way deep back in the hollers, and it's like, are you butted up against like the Smoky Mountain National Reserve, or
Yeah, we're part of the Smoky Mountain National Park. It's not
okay,
far from us at all.
okay, all right. So you hear this scream, this squelching from the raccoon. Then what happened after that?
Um, Once it done the big roar, it started whistling, And when it started whistling, I told my buddy, I said, buddy boy, again, I know every animal in these woods, but this ain't making no sense. Number one, something, we knew it wasn't a dog because the dog didn't bark and grab the coon, nothing like that. We knew it wasn't a bear because a bear does more of a huff than it does a roar, especially black bears. And and then when it started whistling, I told him that's definitely something that I've never run into.
Wow.
And that was it whistled the whole time. And after about 3 or 4 minutes, the two other coons come back out, but that the Bigfoot and the other coon, I know it killed it because I've heard them the coons, when they're fighting for their life, and without a doubt it killed it. But two of them come back out, and it just kept whistling. And I told him, I said, we need to go down there and see what we can see. And as soon as we turned the light on to get out of the loft of his cabin, it quit. So when we got outside, of course, we didn't see nothing, hear, smell nothing, nothing like that. And that was the very first encounter we had. And then it seemed like after that every time we would go into the woods, we was getting something thrown at us, or um, the first real yell that I heard them do, we was filling up a feeder, and it was so loud that your whole body just shook.
Wow.
I've
I heard
I,
this. I've heard it described like somewhere between like a crocodile growl and like a lion roar, and maybe like a silverback together or something like that.
yeah. I don't know if whoever's listening have ever watched the show Finding Bigfoot, but the big, long, drawn out call that Bobo does, it was like that except 100 times louder.
Wow.
It was it was so loud that I honestly thought that there was an airplane coming over the ridge, real low.
Okay.
Um, and
Okay.
when it
Man, can I
takes,
ask you a question, Tim?
yes, sir.
Yeah. So 2008, this happened. How long were you on the property or helping your buddy out prior to this encounter?
We had been going up there for maybe 3, 4 months.
Okay. So, oh, that's interesting. So when you were up in the loft of this cabin trying to, use your crossbow to get these boar off the property and keep them from rooting up the ground. When you turn the lights on, they then recognize that they now know that you know that they are there. So therefore, they
Yeah,
were trying to be aggressive and kind of scare you off the property. That's why you were getting these roars. I'm assuming, of course.
yeah, that's what I think. But of course, we wasn't going nowhere, and um, we uh, when we heard the one yell, we just I looked at him, and we always carried little 22 pistols for snakes and that kind of stuff. And I told him, I said, whatever that, because we still hadn't had, a real good run in definite of what it was. And whenever it done that, I told him, I said, whatever that is, these little 22 pistols ain't going to do us no good. So we eased on out. And then we started finding, when we would go to our tree stands and check our trail cameras and all of that, or check the feeders, they would be limbs broke out of trees and laying across the trail, and stuff blocking our trails, and all of that stuff. And that went on for probably about 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years. And then after that, the only time that they would throw stuff was when it was time for us to leave. And that's what it was doing that evening that I was in our deer hunting. It was throwing uh, the rocks, to tell us to leave.
Any like,
And
what size are these rocks? Are they like hand size, or how big are these?
no, most of them that I've seen so far have been about the size of a golf ball,
Okay.
just enough to get your attention.
Right, right. It's not maybe aggressive, but it's more like, could you please, I'm trying to enjoy my evening or whatever
Yeah,
it is that they're thinking. Okay, all
yeah.
right, interesting. Because I've heard of stories where they launch like, 100-pound rocks at people from like distances of like, 40, 50 yards or something.
Oh
So,
yeah, yeah. The
wow.
strength I've seen them display just by stuff that I've found in my trail, it it's unbelievable. Um,
All the things you've had to move.
yeah,
Okay.
and some of it we couldn't move. They actually in on one of my places that it's on public property. It's not on my buddy's property, but it's on just regular game land. They carried in a whole
Okay, yeah.
oak about as big around as a basketball. They carried it in and laid it across the trail that I walk in on.
So you'd have to get the chainsaw up there to move that out of the way.
Yeah, and since it's on public property, you can't do that. So I just have to work my way around that one.
Also, there's no, so you can definitely tell that it hasn't fallen from the side of the path onto the road because the tree ball is not matching wherever the hole would have been. So it was definitely placed there by somebody or something.
Yeah.
Wow.
The reason I know that one didn't fall that way, the stump that it come off of is above the road, and there's laurel bushes or rhododendrons. We call them laurel bushes.
Yeah,
Just
yeah, I
been
know what all this.
yeah. So the road has got laurel bushes on the sides of it, and it would have had to went through those laurel bushes to get to where it was at, and none of the limbs on the laurel bushes was broke. So
Right. And for listeners at home, laurel is like a spiky little tree with spiky leaves on it on the tips, and it's pretty much green all year round. So,
mhm.
and so if a tree were to come and break these limbs off, you would see it because it's very evident.
Yeah, and there's no way. I mean, it is laying from the butt of it, the very end of it, from the stump was probably laying. I'm, I would say, 8 feet. So there's no way that it could have fell through those laurels and not touched nothing, and then land perfectly in my trail to where I can't get through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like a 90-degree angle to the trail. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. And
Wow.
we was up there hunting. Me and my dad was up there hunting on his property one time, and it was about 5:30. We was up our bow hunting, and it was just getting time of day for the deer and stuff to start moving, and a rock landed about 50 yards out from me. And this had been after it had been happening for a couple of years, so I know not, that they wasn't going to bother me or nothing like that. So I thought, well, I'll just sit here and see how close they'll get.
Oh,
And
okay.
uh, it after about 10 minutes, it throwed another one about 40 yards, and then in a few more minutes, about 30 yards, 20 yards, and the last one that was landed right beside my foot. And I called my dad and I said, "Well, the Bigfoots are up here throwing rocks, and I know it's time for me to go when they do that." So he told me, he said, "Well, there was something down here that I've never heard before." He said there was two of them, and one of them was down. We took an old portage on and made a blind out of it. And he said
Okay.
one of them was down old portage on, and the other one was straight up above me in the laurel thicket. And the one at the portage on, it would whistle once, and the one that was straight up above me would whistle twice. And I actually heard that one. That was the only time that I've really heard them come in around me. And I actually thought it was deer to start with. And I got ready for them to come out, but the only thing that come out was the rocks. So
Okay.
what it was doing, um, I honestly believe that the one was telling the other one, "Well, I'm going up to where the second person is, and I'll go up there and keep my eye on him."
Oh, okay. Some type of intercommunication because they're recognizing that there's two hunters in the woods. Okay.
Yeah. And I've also heard other stories. They was 5 guys camping and was doing some squatching, that kind of stuff, and they'd went and cleared their trails out, and 3 of the guys went to bed in their tents, and 2 of them stayed up. And one guy, 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, decided he was going to walk the trails, and he goes out the trail, and there are 5 sticks that are broken equal length, and 3 of them's laying down in the trail, and 2 of them stuck up. And they know that
Okay.
it wasn't nobody or nothing like that. So that just tells you how intelligent they are. That they
Wow.
were saying 3 of them's down and 2 still up.
Have you, Tim, I'm not trying to cut to any chase, but like, have you actually seen these beings?
I have actually seen 4 of them.
Seen them?
Um, uh, the first one I ever saw, I walked
Wow.
up on while I was bow hunting, and it come out from behind a tree and took off running, and then it dropped down to all fours, and it was gone. I mean, it was unbelievable how fast that thing got gone. And there's no way that it could have been a bear or nothing like that, because it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't built like a. I mean, it walked
What?
out to where I could, and then once I saw it, it dropped down on all fours and took off.
Wow. What did you do? Did you like continue hunting, or did you just get out of there?
I mean, I've learned that they're not going to hurt you.
Okay.
If they want to do anything, they could have killed all the guys that I go with. They could have had us anytime they wanted us. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
so I just watched it, and then I turned my head because of the something caught my eye, and I looked, there's another one, but there wasn't. And when I turned back, that one was already gone. Got gone that fast.
Wow. Did you? What did you see? Could you describe it, maybe?
Yeah, it was just standing up, probably 7 feet tall, something like that, and just just the normal black hair covered, uh, arms longer, hung way down to the side, and when it run and it was on all fours, it was almost like a hyena where the front
Yes.
arms were long,
That's
and it was
interesting.
back in, and it just, but it got gone in just a matter of seconds. It was gone. So that was the um, just a quick look of what I seen.
Uh huh.
Um, the second one, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was no problem. I was wondering, were you able to tell anybody about this experience other than maybe your dad and your close friends? Like, could you? Does anyone else that you confide in? Maybe your wife or partner, or is anybody you can just say, I've seen this and I don't know what to think about it.
No, because at the time it was one of them things where we was still having encounters on my buddy's property, and and to be honest, it got to bothering me so bad. I was having so many run-ins with them that it honestly got to bothering me mentally, to where I
Okay.
thought, well, am I putting too much into this? Is what's really happening? Or
Oh wow. So it
am
made
I
you
just,
doubt your confidence in your own perception of your own life.
yeah? It's like,
That's
well, I I know what I'm seeing, but am I putting too much into it? I
yes.
know that sticks are getting thrown. I know rocks are getting thrown. I know I'm getting yelled at, screamed at. But it was like one of those things that you still wonder if you're, am I letting my mind play tricks on me?
Yeah,
And
is this slipping away from me right now? Am I really seeing this? And then every time you see it, there's a point at which you're like, okay, this is definitely real. Kind of like maybe shake your head and count to 10 and pinch yourself to make sure you're not dreaming. I can only imagine. I've never had an experience like that, and that you're just like, no, I'm going to keep hunting in the woods. I don't know if I had the fortitude to do such a thing. I think it's like pretty brave that you would do something like that. I don't think I could do that.
Well, when I go, when I even when I just go in like through the summer when no hunting season's open, I always carry a gun with me,
Hmm.
and it necessarily I've got it in case the Bigfoots do get aggressive. I don't think they ever will, but if they do, I'll either have my 10 millimeter or my 357. So I but also here where we live, you got a lot of meth heads, um,
Uh,
stuff like that, wild hogs, coyotes, and so you never know what you're going to see in the woods. So I always go
you
with
see,
something to
you see
defend myself.
meth heads in the woods. I'm sorry, it's
Oh,
funny to me. What?
it's until you run up, um, and we've run upon them a couple of times coming out where there may be a stashing something or something like that.
Wow.
Um, but that was the first one I ever seen.
Hmm.
The second one that I saw, me and my buddy Dwight Campbell, I'm my main squatching group is a group called Dirty South Squatching, and they can find it on Facebook. That's the ones that really got me into the research part of it. I was having all these encounters, and um, I'd never, other than me just filming, what I seen and all of that stuff, um, was all I ever done. And then I met up with Dwight Campbell and Bob Trent, and they're the one that's got me. Now I have like 4 or 5 audio recorders that run 24 hours a day for 2 weeks, and then I have to go in and change them out. And they're the
Uh-huh.
one that's really into the research part of it. And
Could you maybe send me that link so I can put it in here so that these gentlemen in this research group can get a little bit of recognition for what they're doing and the research that they are
uh,
doing. You said it was Dirty South Squatching. Is this correct?
yes, sir.
Okay, please send it to me, then, Tim, so I can
Okay.
put it up.
Okay. And but I met these guys. I was on, like I say, I was on the show Finding Bigfoot, and they come in. That was the point where I was having so much trouble wondering if what I was seeing was real
Right.
and all that. And I talked to my buddy, and he said, "Yeah," I said, "Get them to come in, and we'll get some answers." And I told him, I said, "Okay," and so I got a hold of one of the guys in the BFRO. His name is Jim Kerminsky, and he come out and interviewed me, and make sure I wasn't a nut and all of that kind of stuff. And he told me, "You've definitely got uh, you've definitely got them on your property." And I said, "Well, that's good. So I know I'm not behind." And I don't know what other people. I'm a uh, very devout Christian, and
Hmm.
I was praying about it. And I said, "Lord, I need answers. And if I'm done bringing this on myself, then just let me know." And I had a picture that I'd had for probably 3 4 years, and I just thought it was real dark, and I just thought it was the rear end of a deer. And he told me to go in, take that picture, and lighten it up. So I pulled the picture up on my computer, lightened it up, and there's a one of them standing, peeking, doing the peek around the tree like they do. You can see the shoulders, the head.
Right. They like to do that. They love to kind of like pull themselves out and look around. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
seen a pic. I've seen a really good picture from Harley Owens of that. Really good
yeah.
picture of that.
Um, the uh, um, the tree. It would. I'm a pretty good sized feller, and it would probably take 3 guys my size to reach around the tree that it was
Okay.
behind. And when Jim was up, I showed him the tree that it was at, and we done some recreations and that kind of stuff. And best we could figure, it was pushing 7.5 to 8 feet tall. So that got me all right. I know that I'm not losing my mind. These things are real, and that's what I'm actually running into.
Uh-huh.
So after it wasn't no big deal because I had my answer, and I got a hold of Bigfoot 911 on Facebook, and because they were getting ready to do their first Bigfoot festival here in North Carolina, and that's when Dwight and Bob got a hold of me and said, "We'd like to come up to you place and you show us around if that's okay," and everything. So they come up, and I'm sitting waiting to meet them at Walmart, and I'd never met the guys before in my life, and up pulls this blacked out Suburban. And I called my wife. I said, if I come up missing, I'm in a blacked out Suburban somewhere. So, but they turned out to be real good guys, and there's, like I say, they're the ones that's got me um, doing the research part of it now. And me and Dwight was up on one of our research areas, and we were standing there. We'd smelt one, and we're standing there talking about smelling it. And up in the old growed up clear cut, I kept seeing something flitter just a little bit, and there wasn't no birds. It was the classic no sounds at all, like happens a lot when they're around. And
Okay.
we, we keep standing there talking and talking, and I see it move again. And I told him, I said, "There's something moving in that clear cut." So he took his camera and zoomed in, and there was one that was behind some brush and behind a big berm of dirt, and it was peeking up over that, watching us go around the road. And that day, it followed us a mile and a half into the woods and back out.
Whoa.
And
How does that make you feel? You're in the woods with a superior predator for all we know. And you said that they don't bother you, but there has to be some of your mind, at least subconsciously, saying, this thing, if it's following me for this long, because if you're walking an hour and a half in, oh, did you say a mile and a half in or an hour and a half in?
a mile and a half in and a mile
A
and a
mile,
half
a mile
back
and a
out.
half in. So what is that? And if you just do the distance from walking, you stop and you talk. That's like, I don't know, maybe 2 hours or something. And this thing is very interesting. How do you deal with that? Honestly, how
Uh,
do you deal with that?
to be honest, I just ignore it. And I'll tell you of another encounter I had, but I ignore it because to me it's like a cat and a mouse. If that mouse plays dead, the cat loses interest.
Interesting.
And these things are intelligent enough to where that they know that if they can scare you, more than likely you ain't coming back. Especially, you take off running, and you always hear of people saying that they chased them. Well, if they wanted to catch you, you're talking that something when it runs, it takes 6 to 7 foot strides.
Yeah,
So it could get you if it wanted to. And
absolutely.
I just I just act like I don't hear them and don't pay no attention to them. I was up on one of my other research areas, and I'd going in and documenting everything, and I always keep my trails clean going into where I do my research. That way, if something's done, I know what's done since the last time I was in there.
Okay.
And there'd been a bunch of stuff broke over the trail and laurels and all that stuff. So I documented all of that, and I got up to this little curve, and I seen a limb broke off about 7.5 foot. So I just reached up and broke it off and throwed it down, and going up, and I started through this little laurel thicket, and there was a stick that they'd run into the laurel thicket sideways, so it would hit me just about chest high, just to let me know that they had done it. So I took my phone out and documented that, and throwed it down, and I come out the other side and sat down to rest, and this place it takes me about an hour and a half to walk into. And I sat down to rest, and well, here comes a rock over my head and lands out in the clear cut in front of me. So I take my phone out and document it. This and just rock just landed here, and all of that stuff. And I go on in and change my cameras and my audio recorder out. And I come back down to the curve where I'd broke the one limb off, and there's two brand new limbs laying there that wasn't there when I went up. I mean, you could tell they had just been broke because the bark on them where they'd peeled them off was still white. And
All
I
right,
know
right.
what was I would have thrown them out of my trail when I went up. So I documented that, and I start to go into this little narrow spot, and one growls at me. And I thought, well, you idiot, I ain't got time to fool with you. I went through the little narrow spot and I come out the other side and it growled again. And I just ignored it and I started to step across this little branch and I got to looking and they'd stuck a limb between two trees and it would have hit me across the bridge of the nose. So I take my phone out, document that, and throw it down, get on back down in the main road. And there's a log that I had to go in under, and they'd broken a maple tree off about as big around as a softball and laid it over top of the tree that I had to go in under.
Okay.
So, yeah, I would say that the one that growled at me, I was within 20, 25 yards of it.
That's all right. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get a little light on me here. There
Oh,
we
that's
go.
okay.
So, the
But,
sun is blazing during the day, but in the evening it goes down. It's actually quite nice and tranquil. So I enjoy it.
but, th- um, but that's the reason I don't run. I mean, you know, if they, that one could have had me anytime it wanted me
Right.
if they
Probably has
wanted.
the high ground too. Probably has the high ground too if you're in this narrow area. So there's no way. So
Yeah.
you told me that you're a devout Christian, which is, great. So if you take, your faith and your
Uh-huh.
experiences in the woods, how do you put those things together? What is your idea
Well,
what these creatures are?
I honestly think, and that's another thing that I done. I prayed. I don't know for how many years. You know, what are they? Whatever they are, it ain't going to change my faith in God. It don't matter where they come from or what they are or nothing like that. And and
Yes,
I know
sir.
people say that they can teleport and cloak and all of that stuff, but I've I've not ever seen anything to prove that. You know what I mean? But like I
Right.
say, I've been just wanting an answer of what are they, and I had a dream one night, and I know when God gives me a dream because it sticks with you. It's not like it's not like what I call a pinto bean dream. You know where it comes from, and I was walked out on this field in my dream, and there was about 4 or 5 small one juveniles running around playing, and all of a sudden they looked up and saw me, and they started running across the field into the woods, and I hollered and I said, "Hey, what are you?" And the one in the back turned around and said, "I'm just an ape," and it kept going. So as far as I'm concerned, until I see something that that. And if I do see something to the contrary, I'll be the first to admit it. I ain't. It don't bother me a bit to admit when I'm wrong. But everything that I've seen so far, has been because we were actually bluff charged. We got in between a mama and her little one that we
Wow.
didn't know, and the noise that she made. If you go on YouTube, I'm sure you could find it on there, and pull up
Excuse me.
gorilla bluff charge. The sound that they make is identical. It just like that, and but so I've not seen anything. The higher samples. People ask me about the cloaking. What a lot of people don't realize is their hair don't have a constant color in it. The
Uh
hair
huh.
samples they have found will be maybe a brown or a gray or a black, and then it'll go translucent, and then it'll have another color, then translucent, and then
Hmm.
it like that. And to me, it's just like fishing line. That translucent's
Oh,
going to
yes,
pick up
yes.
its surrounding. So that's where I think a lot of people think they cloak. They're not really cloaking. They're just absorbing into their surroundings.
Right. They're like the
I,
master of their terrain. Like they're the ultimate predator in the woods. I got you.
oh, and I've been deer hunting, and a deer walked behind a tree, and me wait on it to walk out, and it never walked out. Well, it didn't disappear or go to another dimension. It just turned around to where I couldn't see it and walked up the hill away from me.
Okay. Yeah.
You, but like I say, if I ever have an encounter or I see any of that, I'll be the first to admit it. You know, um,
I've had Daryl Denton tell me about like lights glowing along the ground, and then like one got near it and he got real close to him and he touched it and it hissed and turned into a possum. And then, I mean, and he's a legit man too. Maybe each place, each maybe families, which we're also we can probably get into, has maybe its own thing as well. Maybe because like
yeah,
not all of them are the same. I was also asking, have you ever seen the face of one? And maybe you can tell me what it looks like.
yeah. The third one I saw, I was actually up at one of my research areas deer hunting, and I'd walked in and changed my recorders out and my trail cam out, and the wind was blowing up that side of the holler real bad. So I thought, well, I'll go on the other side of the ridge. Um, the way I walk in, I have to walk through a clear cut to get in there, and the clear cut wasn't real old. So I thought I looked below the clear cut, and I could see where a deer had horned some bushes at the bottom of it. So I thought, well, I'll just sit right here and hunt till dark. And I'd been sitting there little over an hour, and a rock come out and landed out in the clear cut. And I was like, no, I don't think that's what that was. And I talked myself out of it. And I just kept sitting there. And I thought that was probably a bird I seen or something like that. And I kept sitting there. And like I say, after about an hour and a half, I felt like something was watching me. And I
Oh,
turned and looked at my left shoulder, and on the upper side of the clear cut back in the woods, there was one. It was standing behind the tree, and I could see everything but its right shoulder. Its right shoulder was still behind the tree, and it was maybe 100 yards from me.
okay.
And so I just had got the iPhone, and I'm trying to get it to zoom in and all of that stuff because I'm wanting to get. I can see it enough to I can't see real fine detail, but I could definitely tell what it was, and I could see some features on its face, the eyes and the nose, and but not real up close and personal.
Right, right.
And I'm going to try to get that on my phone, so I turned around with my phone and I couldn't get it to zoom in enough, so I threw my phone down and I picked my gun up because I was wanting to that fine detail of what its face looked like. And when it seen me pick my gun up and I turned around, it stepped back behind the tree, and all I could see was its left shoulder. And it kept standing behind that tree. And I thought, well, I don't want it to think I'm going to hurt it. So I laid my gun down and just sort of watched. It wouldn't move. And I turned back around to where I could just watch it out of the corner of my eye, and it went from standing on uh, 2 feet down to all fours, and done like an army crawl from one clump of trees behind another clump of trees, and it stayed there for just a little bit, and then it army crawled back across the ridge where it come from.
That's incredible. How long did this take? How long was this
Uh,
about?
I'd say altogether a couple minutes
Because
because
I'm former
I turned.
military, Tim. So I mean, and okay, let me ask you a question. I know it's 100 yards away, as you were telling me. So when they're doing this crawl, do you hear it?
I couldn't hear nothing. Of course, I don't have good hearing, so
Oh, okay. Fair
you
enough.
know, it could have been an elephant tap dancing, and I probably wouldn't hear.
Now that would have been a sight to see in the woods there, Tim.
A lot of
That's
times,
crazy. So you actually seen it do, like the elbow crawl like across the ground to maybe
uh-huh,
avoid visual like that you would see it. That's insane.
yeah. Um, and when I turned around and first looked at it, I watched it for probably 10 seconds because it took long for my mind to grasp what I was looking at. And then I was like, "Get your phone." So I got my phone, and when it seen me fumbling around and get my phone, when I turned around to look again, it had stepped behind the tree, and then
Right.
that's when I put my gun up, and but it would only move when it thought I wasn't watching, and I watched it out of the corner of my
Interesting.
eye, seen it was on its going away from me. I turned around and watched it do probably the last 10 yards, which it covered fast. It's not like it took it 20 minutes to crawl back across the ridge. It crawled across the ridge in just a few seconds.
It's so crazy. So when you're staring at it, it's it's very aware of your gaze and it's very
Oh,
aware of its environment and it knows. I bet you when you even get close to entering the wood line, I bet you it already knows you're there.
oh yeah. I'd say more than likely it probably watched me go in, and because it went back towards my research area. Um,
Mhm.
so it was probably watching me the whole time I was in there um, changing all my stuff out.
Incredible. So you were also telling me, Tim, about these family groups, and I think you were saying Franklin County.
Um,
Could you maybe elaborate upon that?
yeah, the county I live in is Macon County,
Okay.
the town of Franklin, and there, from what I've seen, I know there's at least 5 family groups of them in our county, and the reason is I can be on one end of the county one day hunting, get yelled at, screamed at, go on the other end of the county and get rocks thrown and all of that. So I know of at least 5 spots where I'm assuming they're family groups because we have found small tracks and that kind of stuff. So
Hmm.
I'm just assuming that they're family groups, but they stay in those areas quite a bit. They don't.
Do
Ours
you go
don't
any
seem.
place hunting where? I'm sorry, Tim. Do you go any place hunting where you don't have these type of experiences?
Yeah, there are a few places that I go, and I'm trying to find more and more of those because uh, the ones that I seen down on the Georgia line, I thought I had that place to myself to hunt.
Right.
And one year I went in during turkey season, and I'd never seen no sign. I'd never seen nothing like that. And I went in turkey hunting, and I'm standing there in the road waiting on a turkey had gobbled, and I thought, well, I'll go ahead and put my mask on and my gloves and all that, and I'll get set up on it as soon as I hear it gobble again. So I'm standing in an old logging road, and all of a sudden I hear whoop, and I thought,
Oh man.
not down here. I mean, I'm used to it up there, and but it was. I thought, they ain't no way. So I just stood there, and it's that time of morning to where you can see a little bit without a flashlight, enough to move
Yes.
around, and but it's not daylight enough to tell details. And I'm standing there, and it does it again. And whoop, and I thought, you got to be kidding me. And I started walking out the old logging road, and I'd make some calls, and every time I would stop, it would whoop at me, and it followed me I'd say 100, 150 yards out the road. And then when I started coming back, I could hear it up in the laurel thicket, walking. So I knew it was close. And
Oh.
once it got daylight enough for it to see what I was, it never made another sound. It it
Okay. I have a
it
question. I
never.
have a question for you, Tim.
Yeah.
Prior to 2008, prior to 2008, of course, you're a gentleman who enjoys going out into the countryside and hunting. Our great country, the states. And you didn't experience anything, or is there maybe looking back you experienced something, or was it like at this point in 2008 where everything kind of took off?
It it it. I didn't have. If you would have asked me, if they was real, I'd have said maybe in the Pacific Northwest, because I've always believed the Patterson Gimlin film. I've always thought that was legitimate, and I'm like, not in Western North Carolina. Even my daddy and his buddy found those tracks back in the '70s, and barefooted walking through the snow and all that. It still didn't register. I wouldn't have. If I'd have been a betting man, I'd have bet that there's none around here.
Okay.
And in 2008, when I had, I think that's the reason it took me so long to accept that there was here, because I thought I had a pretty good grasp. Like I say, I've actually seen three of the red wolves. I've seen one black panther. I've seen mountain lions and all of that
Right.
stuff. I know
So
that
that
stuff
means
was here.
you're way up in the woods then, because that stuff
Yeah,
is it's I imagine it's more now than it used to be, but back in those days it was much rarer, I imagine.
yeah, yeah. It
Okay.
was,
So I
and
guess the follow-up question would be then, I'm sorry, Tim. The follow-up question would be, so ever since you've had your encounter, has it now like the experiences with these animals, these apes as you call them, has this been increasing? And also, I guess another question aside from that one is your friends and the people that you're now researching with, are the incidences increasing?
yeah, and it seems to be that um, I used to have a lot of hunting spots to myself, but it seems now like um, the one place that I was telling you about where that it had growled at me and that kind of stuff. It's on a place called Boar Tree, and I had never seen no sign up in there for years. And I had 23 different wild hogs on my camera that I knew was, you could tell them apart. So I knew I had at least 23 wild hogs. Well, I started having run ins with and seeing sign broke limbs and broke over trees and X's and all of that stuff just started showing up one year. And in a year's time, that um, group of hogs went from 23 down to three.
Oh,
And
so
I think,
you're actually increasing their range, you're saying.
yeah, I think
Okay.
that anywhere that you've got um, a good population of deer and wild hogs and that kind of stuff, it's a good spot. It's a good candidate for them things being there. And I don't know if the one that that growled at me, I don't know if it's one that has, maybe reaching enough to move out on its own or what. I've never, I have been to where that I know there's more than one, because one will throw a rock or make us something on your left, and when you look to your left, then you'll hear something over on your right.
Right.
There's more than one of them. And I've also found that usually in these family groups, they're hardly ever alone. There's another one. You may not see it or ever hear it, but usually it's around. It's going to be
Wow.
around there somewhere.
Wow, Tim. This has been great, dude. I really appreciate everything you're telling me. This is I always love hearing different perspectives upon this. I'm going to call it a phenomenon, and it's fine. I know it doesn't downplay anything that you've seen. I believe you. I truly
Oh,
do. I love hearing people's point of view upon this experiences people are having more and more of, and you're the kind of guy that you and I could be friends. You know, you'd be like, hey, come on over and cut some timber, and I can come over, and you seem to be that kind of guy.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, and like just a down to earth, Christian man out in the woods doing his thing, living his life. And then all of a sudden, this happens to you, and now it's kind of like, I wouldn't say it's taken over your life. It doesn't seem to be that, but it's definitely become a part of your life, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I I guess that what gets me is I want to learn more because I learn how intelligent they are.
Right.
So yeah, I tell everybody for the first about 3 months, I kept saying, them stupid things has done this, them stupid things has done that. And it took me about 3 months to figure out I was the stupid one of the bunch.
That happens with me with every new friend group I run into. Give me 1 second, Tim. I'm gonna turn the lights on here. It's getting dark. Hold on 1 second. I look like a
Okay.
cloud or something here. All right. That's a little better. There we go. Hey, there he is. I was turning into some
Uh,
type of entity myself. Yeah, yeah, they are. I've heard everything I've heard about them. They seem to be a master disguise, a master. Like they're just for them to be so undetected for so long, or at least where people don't talk about them, which could be for me governmental psychological operation that they know. So therefore, anytime someone steps forth and says, I've seen something in the woods, that people are like ashamed to say so. But I think now more people are stepping forward. We're like, no, there's something here.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that's what I got to the point. Uh, I got to the point. It don't bother me if people don't want to believe me, and that's fine. I Until this past year, I'd never seen the ocean, but me and my wife went on a cruise, so I finally got to say, yeah, there really is an ocean. I finally got to see one. So, but
What a
I
great point, Tim. That is a great point. It's like I've heard another way to put it. Everyone believes in $1 billion, but no one's ever seen $1 billion.
um, question that we get all the time. I do a lot of talking at festivals and conferences and that kind of stuff, and I always get it, especially from older guys. Well, I've been in the woods all my life and I've never seen one. And I said, yeah, I've been in the woods all my life too and never seen one till I went to where they was. You
Right,
know, they're not like deer. They're not in great big herds, and they're not behind every tree. And
right.
this one guy, uh, he said, well, I've had trail cams up for ever how many years, and I ain't never got nothing on them but deer. And I said, well, I've had my trail cams up too, and I ain't never got a rhinoceros on mine. I said, don't mean there ain't no rhinoceroses. That just means there ain't no rhinoceroses where I got my trail cam. And he was like,
Right.
actually makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to see something until you see something. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
It's just it's common sense.
You you don't go to the grocery store to get gas because it ain't there.
That is some wise words, my friend. Tim, this has been a great, great interview. I appreciate you so much for coming on and sharing your stories and sharing your point of view and talking to me about your research. Is there anything else you want to tell me before we get out of here? Maybe tell me a little once again about where we can find you, or if you're promoting anything.
Um, I'm not promoting nothing. My wife says you need to write a book, and I said I hate to read, so I ain't going to force somebody else to do it. But they can find me on TikTok. I've got a few videos on there, and a lot of people, you're not every time you go in the woods, you're not going to get a picture of one or evidence every time you go, but you can find where the breaking sticks. And that, like I say, that's one reason that I clear my trails out. So when I go back, I've got new evidence that wasn't there the last time.
Right. It gives you
Um,
a reference point. Yes.
and like I say, you can find me. It's Tim Dills 13 on YouTube and TikTok. My groups are Dirty South Squatching and NCI. All the guys in both groups, I would back them up 100%. If they told me a mouse could pull a house, I'd get a camera and a log chain because I'm getting ready to see something.
You,
You know
that
what?
you, yeah,
I've got
you're about ready to see that and call the circus at the same time.
I've that much confidence in them. And
That's fantastic.
um, just check us out. And, if you've got questions, I ain't got all the answers. And that's what I tell people when I speak. I'll talk about what I know. If I don't know, I'm not going to say because,
Wow.
there ain't no use running my mouth on something that I know nothing about.
And that is the very definition of the word humble. That's exactly
Well,
where more people need to be nowadays, if you ask me, Tim.
I take it like a politician. They talk about stuff they ain't got a clue about. I ain't a politician. I don't know. I ain't going to say a word.
There you go. Tim, thank you so very much for coming on the Eye of Jupiter. I appreciate it, man. And stick around for a second and I'll chat with you after the show, okay?
Okay. Thank you for having me on.
It was my pleasure, man. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Tim Dills. That was a great interview. Uh, go over and check out his stuff, man. He told you. I'll put the links down below. Go ahead. If you enjoy what I do, I'm finding some very interesting guests at the moment. I'm really enjoying these conversations. Like, give me that like. It gives me a little help in the algorithm. And subscribe if you like. If you like hearing, shows like this. And once again, you are listening to the Eye of Jupiter. And we are the eye, and we are aware. Thank you so very much. Until next time, bye.